So the question is, who are the sons of God that are marrying the daughters of men?
I think we're super quick to divide over things, but this is not salvific, meaning it's not a salvation issue.
The sons of God refers to angels, angelic beings, intermarrying with humans. There are only 5 occurrences in the entire Bible where we have the exact expression, son of God or sons of God.
These were actual angels that were marrying humans and having sexual relationships with humans.
So when Peter is talking about the angels who sinned, he's very clearly talking about Genesis chapter 6 because this is connected.
More confirmation that these were angels and not just men. Were the sons of God in Genesis 6 fallen angels? Who are the Nephilim? This should be interesting. I have a video on the channel of the Nephilim, but let's watch this, see what this guy has to say. This is from Southern Seminary. The full video will be linked down below in the description.
Well, Genesis 6 verses 1 to 4 is a difficult text. And as we attempt to interpret it, we should be humble because there are different interpretations that have been taken of this text. And I don't think that whatever interpretation we take, I don't think we should be divisive with other Christians in the church or among the people of God. There are 3.
I think we're super quick to divide over things, but this is not salvific, meaning it's not a salvation issue. So I like what he says there because we shouldn't be dividing over these, whether you believe it or you don't believe it, his interpretation, my interpretation, another person's. It's not an issue to divide over or cause disunity.
Genesis 6 says that the sons of God saw the daughters of men, and they chose the daughters of men for themselves as wives, and they married them. So the question is, who are the sons of God that are marrying the daughters of men? Well, there are 3 different interpretations. One is that the sons of God is a reference to the godly line of Seth. Cain killed Abel, so after Abel died, Adam and Eve had relations, and Seth was born, and Seth carried on the godly faith of Abel. So one idea is that the sons of God are the descendants of Seth marrying the daughters of men, the ungodly line of Cain. Second interpretation is that the sons of God refers to angels, angelic beings, intermarrying with humans. The third idea
I would be number 2. That's the approach I would take, and the belief of I would go with.
Is that the sons of God are heroes from the mythical past, tyrant kings. We have stories from the ancient Near East, for example. We have stories of a person by the name of Gilgamesh, and he was part god and part human, and accomplished many mighty feats. So how do we find the right interpretation? The exact expression, sons of God, only occurs 4 or 5 times in the Hebrew Bible. We have 1 occurrence here in Genesis 6. We have 2 occurrences in the introduction to the book of Job. In the introduction to the book of Job, we see God gathering in his heavenly court, his heavenly assembly with the angels. And the angels are called sons of God there. There's another occurrence in the book of Job, Job chapter 38, where God is challenging Job, and he says, where were you when I created the world? When he created the world, the sons of God sang for joy. So it seems to, it also seems to be a very clear reference to angelic beings. The last occurrence is in Aramaic in the book of Daniel. When the king looked into the furnace, he saw four people there, and it says that one looked like a son of God, which would mean a divine being, an angelic being. There are only 5 occurrences in the entire Bible where we have the exact expression, son of God or sons of God, and it always refers to angelic beings.
So interesting, he's saying that every occurrence we see of sons of God, that term in Genesis chapter 6, is referring to angelic beings, angels. It's not referring to the sons of Seth. It's not referring to men of ancient that were, believed to be half God, half man or whatever. he's saying throughout the scripture, it's always referring to angels, which would be take two, or the second position he shared, which is where I stand on it, that these were actual angels that were marrying humans and having sexual relationships with humans.
We must distinguish this use from other places. There are other places in the Bible where they indicate that the relationship of a human to God is like a father-son relationship. So Adam and God have a father-son relationship.
Interesting.
In the covenant that God makes with David, God and David have a father-son relationship. But it doesn't actually say that Adam is a son of God. It doesn't use that linguistic expression, and it doesn't say that David is the son of God. So the only time that linguistic expression occurs in the Bible, it always and very clearly refers to angelic beings. We also have the witness of the New Testament. So there are two passages in the New Testament that refer to this. One is 2 Peter chapter 2, and the other is the book of Jude. And both of these texts are very closely related to each other. In 2 Peter chapter 2, Peter is talking about how difficult days are coming for the Christians, and there will be people who deny the faith, who deny the truth about Jesus Christ, the truth about his work, who deny the gospel. There will be false teachers, and they will bring corruption into the church and destruction into the church. What Peter does is he appeals to the Old Testament, and he says, well, if God could deliver his faithful people in difficult times in the Old Testament, then he will be able to do it in the New Testament as well. Peter refers to two examples in the Old Testament. One is the story of of Genesis 6 and Noah, and the other is the story of Lot being rescued from the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. And if you look in the Greek text of 2 Peter, it's very clear that there are two examples and not three examples, by the use of the word and. So if God did not spare the angels who sinned, and he delivered Noah, and he did not spare the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah, and he rescued Lot. So there are two examples joined by the word and each example has two parts, a negative part and a positive part, a negative part and a positive part. So when Peter is talking about the angels who sinned, he's very clearly talking about Genesis chapter 6, because this is connected with the story of Noah. Some people say, well...
So it seems to be more confirmation that these were angels and not just men or the sons of Seth.
Well, no, he's not talking about Genesis 6. Well, then my question to them is, if Peter is trying to encourage his readers from well-known stories in the Old Testament, and if the angels who sinned is not Genesis 6, then where else is the story? There is no other story in the Old Testament that it could be referring to. Some people think that it's the fall of Satan, but as we're going to see when we talk about that, there is no story in the Old Testament that describes the fall of Satan.
I think people have trouble with Genesis 6 because the idea of fallen angels or angels having intimate relationship with humans is just like, oh, it feels gross. How could an angel that is not really material, it's spiritual, be able to have sexual relationship with humans? How could they be marrying humans? How could this happen? But not realizing the spiritual realm is not always just bound to our understanding. And the Bible says, like in the New Testament, if you're helping somebody, you may be entertaining an angel. So you might see an actual physical person thinking it's a person and it really be an angel, and you helping them, you could be entertaining an angel. So the spiritual realm is much more complex than the average person would probably think to believe. And the fact is, there are times where angels showed up in the Bible as material people, and people sometimes didn't even realize it was an angel they were talking to.
Is very clearly alluding to Genesis 6. Jude is doing the same thing, and it's very obvious in the book of Jude, because he's talking about people who are false teachers, people who are going to deny the faith. And he also appeals to the Old Testament and shows how God delivered his people in the past, and he will do so in the future. He also refers to two events. He refers to angels who abandoned their proper dwelling place, their proper home. He also talks about the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah. And he says, since they, in the same way as these, committed strange immorality. Well, in the Greek text, the they refers to the angels. And the same way as these, the these refers to the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah. So what the story of Genesis 6 has in common with the story of Sodom and Gomorrah is that there's an abnormal form of sexuality going on. If God can deliver his people from even the strangest perversions, then he will deliver the people who are listening to Peter and the people who are listening to Jude. He will deliver us. Now, someone might come to me and say, well, Jesus in the Gospels says that the angels in heaven neither marry nor are given in marriage.
This is good because I've heard this used a lot. Oh, Isaiah of the Nephilim, if these people were angels or half-breeds or whatever you want to call it, how could that be when the Bible clearly says that angels can't get married and we won't get married? But
so it's
I like this
impossible
explanation here.
for an angel to have physical relations with human women. Well, they're not reading the Gospels accurately and clearly, because Jesus is saying that when in the resurrection, when Jesus returns at the end of history, we who are resurrected are not going to marry, because we're going to be like the angels in heaven. Notice he says the angels in heaven, and Jude says they left their proper dwelling place. So there's no contradiction between Jesus and Jude. In heaven, the angels don't marry. In Jude, they abandoned their proper dwelling place and they go to commit strange immorality. So there's no confusion. So it seems very clear. Genesis 6 is telling us that these are angels who are marrying humans, and Jude and Peter are telling us that is the correct interpretation. The next piece is, who are the Nephilim? In verse 4 of Genesis 6, it says, the Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God had relations with human women, and they bore children of them. End of sentence. New sentence. They were the heroes who were from the ancient past, men of renown. There's two major sentences there. First one says, the Nephilim were on the earth in those days and also afterward. There are two possible interpretations of this expression, they were on the earth in those days and afterward. What does that mean? They were there in those days and afterward. Well, some people think this means that the Nephilim were the children that came from the angels who married the women in Genesis 6, verses 1 to 3, and that the Nephilim were the product of these unnatural unions, and they appeal to texts from the 3rd century BC and 2nd century BC, the so-called Enochic traditions, the traditions about Enoch, where the Nephilim are interpreted as giants. There's another interpretation that's possible. When it says the Nephilim were there in those days and also afterward, it could mean that before the angels had sex with the human women, the Nephilim were there, and they were also there after the angels had sex with women. So it could mean that the Nephilim had nothing to do with the angels marrying the humans. I think that is the correct interpretation for two reasons. First of all, I examined every occurrence of this expression and also afterward. I went to the Hebrew Bible, I looked up every occurrence of this phrase, and I examined how it was used. And the second interpretation best fits and suits how this word is used. So when it says they were there in those,
I'll let you guys finish watching the whole video on your own. Super interesting stuff. Were the sons of God fallen angels? And it seems to be that he says, yes, they were. According to the Bible, the 4 or 5 other occurrences, they always refer to fallen angels. So there was a marriage in Genesis 6 of humans with angels and sexual relations. And he's saying was the offspring the Nephilim. And he doesn't believe it. He said the 2 school of thoughts is yes and no. We don't know. I don't fully know where exactly I stand on that specific point. Some say they were, some say they weren't. He says they weren't because he'll go on in detail. You can watch the full video. I just don't want to make this like a 25-minute video. But he says before they were there and after they were there, the Nephilim specifically, this race of giants we know the Nephilim were. So he's saying doesn't mean that they were the offspring because they were there before this was happening, in his opinion, and they were thereafter. So we don't know. It is interesting. It's mysterious the way the world was. I was thinking about this today. Like 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago, the world was a completely different place. And it's just interesting to look back, to think back, and to read these texts in the Bible that have been in debate for 1,000 years of people going back and forth trying to figure out what exactly does it mean, what was it? Were these hybrids? Were these children of women who were having sex with angels? And, you know, there's still people we deal with in deliverance to this day that say, you know, demons come and have sexual relationships with them out of their will, which is sad. It's demonic. It's gross that demons to this day do this. And it seems to be, and he'll go in later, again, I didn't finish the video, talking about that Jude talks about these angels being in chains now. Somehow, like, God didn't allow this anymore and put them in chains, and this was their punishment for getting married to humans, and no longer can these angels marry humans or these demons marry humans. There are a lot of people that demons will tell them we're married. So people think that they have a spiritual spouse or they're married to a demon, and a demon will tell them I'm married to you, and they try to make covenant. I have a whole video on spiritual spouses. I have a whole video on the origin of demons and the Nephilim. You can search the channel. Thought I would cover this. Interesting reaction somebody sent me. Let me know what you guys think down below. We're live Monday, Tuesday, and sometimes Friday. We upload multiple shorts a day and almost every day. Pray about becoming also a monthly partner with the channel, a monthly partner with the ministry. You can monthly partner on my website down below, or you can join on YouTube monthly. That helps us keep bringing this out without having to get sponsorships, doing ads and commercials in between saying we're sponsored by HelloFresh. It helps us to be able to keep doing this without sponsorships. All right, love you guys, appreciate you guys, see you in the next one.